So, as I mentioned, Alabama started this week with Houston. This was a huge matchup. This is the third in a pseudo series which Alabama has had with Houston. The first two matchups with the home and home, and then this one being that Players Era tournament there in Vegas. Somehow, Nate Oates must have Kelvin Sampson's number. This is another very, very close game. An instant classic. However, Alabama does get the win in this one to go 3-0 against Houston and Kelvin Sampson. It really showed us a lot about this team. This Alabama team, when I talked about this game in their preview, I talked about how rebounding had to be a key, right? Alabama against Illinois was able to win despite Illinois doubling them up on rebounds, right? Alabama wins by 13, but Nate Oates talked about how Illinois doubling them up on offensive rebounds was not something that potentially we could see moving forward, because we knew we had Houston coming up, and if you let Houston double you up offensive rebounding, you're just going to lose the game, right? That's the style in which they play. They play a very defensive game, a very physical game, and they crash the offensive glass. And if they're able to get that many offensive rebounds, they're just going to win. And thankfully, Alabama was able to actually win the rebounding battle. And in my opinion, it was the difference in the game, right? And no player, and if you're going to talk about the rebounding battle and talk about this game, no player was bigger than Mo Diabate. This was the Mo Diabate game. This was completely him, and this was his best game in an Alabama uniform. Bar none, no questions asked, right? Diabate goes for 10 and 16 to go with 3 blocks. It really felt like he had more blocks than that, and really just was super physical and was the answer for all things Houston, right? This game really, Mark Sears got a little bit back on track following the scoreless game against Illinois. He does have 24 points, goes 4 of 8 from the three-point line, has 3 assists, is able to handle the physicality and pressure that Houston put on the ball. So, had a pretty good game. Grant Nelson as well had 13 and 10, right? Another guy who, in general, handled the pressure fairly well. He had 4 turnovers, but again, this is a Houston team that does a really good job getting into you. His length, with the way Houston likes to get under you with smaller guys. Not super surprising he had the turnovers, but he played 40 minutes, was very big in this game. Latrell Wrightsell also has double digits. 3 of 4 from 3, absolutely huge. 3 of 6 from 3, 3 of 4 from the line. Phylon, is really the only guy, if I'm going to look at somebody that played big minutes in this game but did not play well, Phylon's probably the only one that would fit that category. He just did not handle the physicality of Houston well, right? He goes 0 of 9 in this game. He missed what were typically going to be some easier shots for him, some layups around the rim, some slight floaters, just some things that we've seen Phylon hit a lot this season. Not super surprising that he has this issue against the physicality of Houston and the experience of Houston, having a younger guy. I was thinking he was potentially going to do well in this game after how well he had played in the Illinois game and the Purdue game, but unfortunately it just wasn't the case. Like I said, Mo D is the answer in this game. Plays 28 minutes, has 16 rebounds, 5 offensive. And Nate talked about how Mo had 40 blue-collar points, right? They tracked the blue-collar points with steals, being on the floor, offensive rebounds, blocks. And Mo had some of the most blue-collar points ever tracked. By far a single-game record, especially a record for a game that didn't go into overtime. From my understanding, I think the only game that was ever close was the 4 overtime game with Carolina a few years ago. And it was just a situation where Alabama and Mo Diabate just were absolutely huge, and he was the embodiment of what Nate wants to see in a blue-collar mentality, right? This was a game where it felt like Alabama was going to be able to close it out in regulation. Then Houston comes and storms back. Alabama's able to send it to overtime. And then in overtime, Alabama had kind of all the answers. Alabama wins this game and gets off to a big win in this Players Era tournament and a push to a championship, that they had talked about. They wanted to try to win 4 championships this season. Players Era, regular season, conference, tournament, and then national, right? So this was the first step in that, and a big win over Houston, was a great first step in this.